Humanitarian Aung San Suu Kyi, a Burmese politician, once said, "Politicians are amazing. Oftentimes, they're the last ones to know what the people actually want." Now, Aung San Suu Kyi, who actually received a Nobel Prize for her work in Myanmar, is actually coming under deserved criticism for her silence in the face of the genocide cast upon the Rohingya people throughout Myanmar. In fact, according to an article by the Brookings Institution entitled "China and the Changing Myanmar," we can see that foreign direct investment may be steering it toward democracy, but its policies with regards to human rights are falling apart. Now, while President Thein Sein has loosened military control over what is known as the junta, we'll see that overall democratization has gone down. Considering the Council on Foreign Relations reports this very morning that the Buddhist group 969 attacked and killed nearly 38 Rohingya people this very morning, it is vital that we ask today's question. Do the recent crackdown on protests in Myanmar mean that the country's right, or rather, shut up, level to democracy is starting to slip? My answer is yes, because what seemed like democratization is actually just turning into oppression for three reasons. First being that the political situation is overwhelming productive reforms. Second is that economic investment is actually steering them in the wrong direction. And lastly, that the power of the media is actually being grossly exaggerated. But first, when looking to the political situation in Myanmar, it's important to note that overall the political situation is only getting worse and is opposing ethnic minorities throughout Myanmar. Now, Burma, now known as Myanmar, is made up mainly of Buddhist populations, but the Rohingya, a Muslim minority, is actually being discriminated against. The Bangkok Post tells us this very morning that Thein Sein is now taking a liking to the word "collar," a derogatory name for a person of the Islamic faith. Now, furthermore, we can see that Aung San Suu Kyi, in an interview with CBS, actually refused to comment on the oppression of the Rohingya people, another sign that overall oppression is on the increase. Now, a separate article by the Washington Times tells us on March 28th of last month that because all these events are coming to coalesce around the political situation, it's guaranteeing that overall the stability in Myanmar is unsure in the future. While the junta may have released some control, they're still overwhelmingly against Muslim populations. And as their Prime Minister, Suharto, who recently visited Thailand to see about returning 3,000 Rohingya people, this is now being declared against international law. And the Huffington Post from March 27th tells us that because it is this violence is being perpetrated against a single ethnic religion, it's considered genocide. Thus, democratization and human rights are most definitely slipping. But apart from that, if we look to the economics of Myanmar, we'll also see that things are becoming less democratic. An article by the International Business Times from April 9th, or in other words yesterday, tells us that the Kazakh Dam, which is a nearly $36 billion project, was outright canceled. The project originally involved an investment by the People's Republic of China, which has actually exercised quite a bit of control over Myanmar between the period of 1968 to 1978, in which they supported the Communist Party of Burma. Now, unfortunately, democracy hasn't necessarily taken hold throughout the country because many of the people are once again still oppressed. Apart from that, we can see that the local newspaper Irrawaddy tells us that thousands gathered to protest Aung San Suu Kyi as she arrived in a rural village, claiming that she used to be with us, but now she's against us. Now, the newspaper, controlled by state media, went on to say that this is a new era of Burma politics that could actually be quite productive. But if the people are dissenting and they're not receiving the materials they need, and it's being allocated to the projects such as the copper mine that's planned to be constructed next month, then it's not necessarily becoming more democratic. Thus, human rights are slipping. But if we look further into the media propaganda that's now being pushed upon American citizens and citizens around the globe, we'll see that it's not actually a democracy, it's more of a theocracy for many reasons. Now, if we look to an article by ABC News from just 2 days ago, it specifically tells us that only 16 newspapers are given state-run licenses to actually issue what is called free press. Now, apart from that, we'll see that an article by CNN tells us on April 2nd that if you take a trip to Myanmar, you will most likely enjoy wide broadband internet access. After all, you're a US citizen. The article goes on to say that only 5% of the Myanmar population actually has access to those resources. And given that the Human Rights Watch Association reported on the very first of this month that they now condemn the idea that it is a democracy, it's clear that the situation isn't becoming any better. Now, Jay-Z, a hit rapper, once recently visited Cuba with his wife Beyonce. Now, you may notice, if you're paying attention, that this is a completely misplaced piece of information. So allow me to insert an equally misplaced question. Monica, would you like to go to prom with me?
Sure, yeah, I'd love to.
All right, there you have it. Thus, media rights within Myanmar are not necessarily becoming more democratic. So in reflecting on today's question, we can see that although politicians like to yell at people that they actually have a lot of respect for, and they like to overemphasize the issues, that the question today, whether or not human rights are slipping in Myanmar, is a solid yes, because overall the country is becoming less democratic for three reasons. First, political circumstances are overwhelming productive reforms. Second, economic development is displacing certain peoples. And lastly, the media power is grossly exaggerated. So I'm looking back to the original quote by Aung San Suu Kyi. Yes, politicians are ignorant of the needs of the people, but in a democracy, we must expect more. And for us to consider Myanmar a democracy, it must travel down the long road ahead. Thank you.
Nice job.